It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. As always, that is Alan Saunders. And below us, joining us on today's episode, you've seen Derek Bell, so we got to get the other guy from Steelers Now on the pod. Nick Farabaugh joining today's show. What's going on, Nick?
What's going on, guys? I don't know if we've ever done this 3-man setup. Maybe we have once or twice, but
I think at least once.
At least once. And the only reason I know that it was at least once is because I pre-set up everything in Megaphone, and as I'm typing all three of our names, one comes up. So it's at least happened once.
Okay.
There you go.
But I'm not sure about beyond that one time.
Well, let's
go ahead.
band together.
The band is, if Derek were here, this would be maybe, I don't know if people would be able to watch or listen. The screen might just completely.
Maybe right before the draft, we'll have to get all of us on.
Yeah. It's like double of the Mega Powers when Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan joined forces. That happening twice.
It's like a SummerSlam match. There you go.
There we go. All right. Big news of the day that doesn't necessarily involve the Steelers, or does it? We're going to find a way to make it involve the Steelers here. Stefon Diggs traded from the Buffalo Bills to the Houston Texans, along with a 6th in 2024 and a 5th in 2025. They get back a second-round pick in 2025 from Houston, but originally Minnesota's pick. Stefon Diggs on the move. I feel like this has kind of been in the rumors for a couple of seasons, but didn't happen. And they kept downplaying it that there was some, bad blood there or anything like that. Finally, it comes to fruition. Stefon Diggs on his way out of Buffalo to Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we had my guy Mookie Hawkins on from Buffalo back before the playoff game, right? And it was, we talked about it. And I thought Mookie was pretty confident that things were okay between the Bills and Stefon Diggs. When you look at this trade, I think it's very clear that things were not okay between the Bills and Stefon Diggs. This is not a trade you make if you're happy with this player. This is very similar to the Steelers and Deontay Johnson. I don't care how many times Mike Tomlin wants to tell me how much he loves Dante Jackson. You don't make dumb trades with good players when everything's just hunky-dory. And this is a categorically dumb trade. I mean, Stefon Diggs did not have the greatest end of the 2023 season. I think that's pretty clear. But the Bills are getting a 2025 second. Usually you look at the value there, it's like a round down for a year. It is the Vikings second, so maybe not quite like a 2024 third, but they also give up 2 more draft picks to make the trade, the 5th and the 6th. They're eating a $31 million dead cap hit this
Historic.
year.
Largest for a receiver ever.
Largest dead cap hit ever for a wide receiver. And they're getting nothing. And they traded him inside the AFC to a team that now suddenly looks like a contender. This is a brutal trade for Buffalo. You cannot convince me that things did not go badly between the Bills and Stefon Diggs.
I think they went badly. I'm not sure it's as brutal as you're making it out to be. Again, I value the 25 class a little more, maybe. We've just heard so much about how the 24 class is the shallowest class. I kid you not. I have talked to scouts that have told me this is the shallowest class ever. So I think, the 25 picks, a lot of these moves that we're seeing with trades are with 25 capital. And there's a reason for that. A lot of teams want to dip their toes into that. I don't think they're as high on this 24 class. I think the Vikings pick.
I mean, Houston has 42 this year. You're not going to convince me that the Bills preferred the Vikings second next year. What
would I rather have this year? Would I rather have the Texans third, or would I rather have that Vikings second? I'd definitely rather have that Vikings second. Now, if it's the Texans second, I think you're probably taking the Texans second. But
anybody's second. If you're getting anybody's second this year, you would take it before you took that.
Probably, yes. But I also do believe that, one, I think they probably got as much as they could have for him. I don't think they could have taken much more than they did. If this had to happen, and it feels like a Deontay Johnson move, the Deontay Johnson move kind of had to happen, and it backed themselves into a corner. It felt like this had to happen. I do think Brandon Beane did a nice job of maximizing the value, but they lose their wide receiver one. And that room now is Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and a bunch of guys. They lost Gabe Davis to free agency. So like now it is they like we have talked about with the Steelers where they have musts. Like now Buffalo has a must at receiver, and they are picking in the back end of round one, and they have put themselves into that hole. So from that perspective, certainly, and the cap hit is just brutal for a team in contention. Like for a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl, that is a large cap hit to eat. But it speaks probably to the toxicity of the situation, right? To eat that, to not wait for any bit as long as they could have. So I think that speaks to that. It's for Houston, dude. Like that's a really good deal for Houston. I mean, look at what you could have argued they had a wide receiver one. I mean, Nico Collins is certainly on the edge or threshold of that. And now they have a true one in Diggs. I think Diggs only has one or two like elite top precipice years left. He's getting up there in age, but guess when the contract runs out? Right when that ends.
Runs out whenever they want it to run out. This is the only year that's guaranteed money. They can walk away from this after this year with no dead money. It's such a good deal for Houston. Such a good deal.
It's a really low risk move for them with high upside to cash in on CJ Stroud's rookie deal. And listen, I kind of look at it and like Nico Collins is going to get a bag, but they have the money to pay him. I mean, they have money to throw around. And this group is going to be a really nice group. When you talk about those two guys, Tank Dell is in there, Dalton Schultz at tight end, Joe Mixon at running back. I mean, that is a really good group. They have two very good tackles. Need to fix up the interior O-line a little bit, but it is a good group. Shaq Mason's there. It is a really nice group. They took themselves from AFC fringe contenders into the precipice of AFC contendership. Like this, if you line this team up on paper right now, it looks like a team that could go into Arrowhead and win. That's the
especially in that division. Like they're gonna run to the top of it. Like that. Like this is a team that's 100% going to be hosting a playoff game right now. I want to go back to Buffalo real quick though. Like the money is so bad on this deal with the 31 million dead hit. And you're talking about a win now team. I could almost argue they might have been better off just cutting him so they could spread the cap hit out. Like, would you rather have a second round pick next year or a $15 million player this year? I don't know. I think that's a reasonable choice. And they could have done it. Remember the week before free agency, they had to cut half their team to get cap compliant. If they would have known this was going to happen, they could have done all that very differently. The trade market would have been much better for Stefon Diggs before all these teams spent all their cap space in free agency. If you wanted to trade him, the time to do it was in March. So I don't know what happened that this became a thing that it had to happen now, but it sure looks like this wasn't the plan from the start of this offseason, and this is something that's developed to this point. Did he get the best deal that he could get today? Maybe, but this is just a catastrophically bad deal for Buffalo.
Listen, I mean, they might be moving up in the draft too. I mean, will they have that second? I don't know. They might be going up to get Brian Thomas or going up to get, way up. If they really want to go up and really want to go way up, they could jump 20 spots, try to get up to 8 and get Roma Dunza. Like they could do that if they really wanted to. So I guess from that perspective, maybe you want the second because you can maybe
you can use it as draft capital.
Get a guy. But I agree. The timing really, really hurt them from it. Just like I think from a lot of angles, a lot of the trades this year have really came with weird timing. Like
nobody's getting good value on any trade.
No, I mean, we talked about this, with Justin Fields, where why was he traded so late? It felt like, he could have, if you traded him earlier, or Kenny Pickett, even if they had known that, if that was the plan, they could have maybe gotten a little more for him. So the player trade market has been very soft this year. It's kind of interesting. And a lot of teams seem to be cutting a lot of these guys rather than trading them. Like, I'm sure if they wanted to, the 49ers could have kept Eric Armstead for a little bit longer and tried to trade him. But
Shoots here.
yeah, I mean, it just seems
Same
like,
thing. Yeah, like
it seems like teams are maximizing the cap flexibility and wanting to dive into free agency a lot more. So, man, the Diggs deal, I mean, I think Buffalo's going to be fine in terms of filling that void. I think they'll find someone.
A.D. Mitchell, come on down. You are a Buffalo Bill.
Xavier Legette, maybe even at 28, that could happen. So like I could see it happening. Listen,
Yeah.
we've heard that. We've heard whispers of it. Like Mel Kiper said, Xavier Legette round 1 stuff. Like that could be a thing. I think
if he gets invited to the draft.
If we're talking about Steelers implications, Brian Thomas on the board to 20. The Buffalo Bills want to come.
Well, here's what I wanted to bring up before we go to that, because we're talking about them maybe waiting too long. But if you were going to wait, why not see, and if you weren't going to get a day 1 pick back anyway, why not see who left round 1 without a receiver this year and traded him on second round of the
dumbest
draft?
Possible time to make this trade. Like, it really is. Unless you're sure you're using the draft pick you got to move up. Like, that's the only way this makes sense, is that they're actively talking to whoever, the Chargers, to go up to get Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze. Like that's
it's going to cost a lot more than
that's going to be that's going to be a lot more than that. But
a slight trade up for a Brian Thomas. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you were talking to a team like the Chargers, wouldn't you try and fold Diggs into that deal?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, sure, exactly. I'm sure the Chargers would love that. The Chargers could trade their first down, get Diggs, and then draft Tyler Guyton at 27 and fix their offensive line too, and be very happy with that. I don't know. None of this trade makes sense, other than it's very clear the Bills were just done with this guy and took the deal that was available to them today. I want to talk about the Steelers implications. There's like a bunch of different ways we can go here. We can talk about the draft. We can talk about let's go, Nick. The way you and I immediately started texting about this after the deal broke. This has become an obscenely deep Houston Texans wide receiver room, and there's 2 guys in particular that, in my end, are kind of hanging out the end of there that might become available because of this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the 3 guys after are Noah Brown, Robert Woods, and John Mitch. I'm not sure who's going to be on the outs. My gut says it's going to be Robert Woods. That's my guess.
Well, he makes the most money. Not that the Texans are like hard up against it, but he has about a $9 million cap hit. They could save 6 or so of that by trading him.
He is like a very Steelers move at this point, where he's a vet, can block really well, knows a similar type of system because he's been in the McVay kind of system. So he kind of he's kind of an interesting player that fits this Shanahan McVay mold. So I could see them making that. I think the interesting name is Mechie. I don't anticipate them trading Brown. They just re-signed him.
Brown outsnapped both Woods and Mechie, even after Tank Dell got hurt. He moved into the starting lineup last year. So I think it's pretty clear, like, that's the guy they would want to keep if they can have their way. But yeah, I think Mechie's really interesting just because it's kind of untapped potential, right? I mean, coming off the ACL surgery, then he has the leukemia diagnosis, doesn't play at all his rookie year, kind of gets into the fold late last year, gets passed by Dell, which is not like that's some kind of indictment of him as a player, and really didn't get very many reps. And so I think he's kind of interesting. He's more interesting to me than like the wide receiver 3, 4, 5 types the Steelers have right now. That's for sure. Like, I think there's real starter capable upside there from him that has not really been, scratched in any way at this point.
I mean, people ask like why, like when I posted that, why would I trade for him? And yeah, he's kind of another wide receiver 4 type, but he's a wide receiver 4 type with upside. Like Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins have no upside. Like, I'm going to be real. Like, they just don't. They really don't have much upside to them. Calvin Austin has some, but like Mechie's a young dude that, as he started to play a little bit down the stretch last year, like you watch some of the tape, he started to pop a little bit. I popped on a few games of John Mechie tape, especially that wild card game against Cleveland. Like, he was doing some cool stuff there. I think he could be interesting because I don't think he'd cost a lot either. Like you might be able to get him with one of your 6 if they're willing to move on from him. So like I don't think it would cost much. So I would at least inquire about him. Would he like magically solve the wide receiver woes? No. But we've talked about how they probably need a 3 and a 2 at wide receiver. The 2's coming in the draft early. But Mechie could be a guy that pushes for that 3 and is like that upside option that isn't going to cost a ton. So I'm interested, and he's cost controlled, so he's still on a rookie deal for 2 years. Like I think that's attractive if you don't want to double down on a receiver and you like a guy like Mechie. So I do think he could be an interesting player. I don't know that that is a slam dunk deal either because I think looking from the Texans' view too, they probably do like the upside that John Mechie brings.
Yeah, I think they'd rather probably trade Woods, right? If they could.
Yeah, I think
I just don't know. I don't know if Woods at $6 million is something there's going to be a lot of teams clamoring for, given the number of wide receivers available in this draft.
He feels like a guy you can wait out that will get cut anyways.
One of them is going to, I mean, you got to think one of them is going to get cut, right? I mean, are they going to keep all 6 of those guys?
Yeah, I don't think so. Listen, Robert Woods is probably like the wide receiver 5 or 6 on this team right now just because of who they have. And he's going to – I mean, I think with the post-June 1st designation, they save cap too.
And Steven Sims is there, and he's their kick returner.
Yeah.
So like, what, I don't know. Maybe Mechie could return kicks. I probably could, but hasn't done it.
Like, I just think, Woods is probably a likely cut option. Again, he is an interesting player for the Steelers just because I think he fits kind of the model they would add. He's kind of over the hill, though, and he doesn't have a ton of upside again. We talk about that upside cap at wide receiver. So I don't think like any of these guys, Mechie, Brown, or Woods are like the perfect trade candidate, but like it is not going to be a super robust trade market for receivers right now. Maybe the Aiyuk smoke becomes real if that deteriorates in mini camp and they can't get a deal done towards there. Maybe that becomes a more interesting possibility at that point. But you're looking to fill this out a little bit and try to get some upside in that room. And I feel like Mechie is an interesting candidate there. And again, we're not talking about giving up a 3rd or a 4th here. It's probably a late round pick, maybe a pick swap. So that would be an interesting add to me because you need guys with upside. Like, even if you like the same argument we had with Justin Fields, like, even if you don't love the tape Justin Fields put out there, you get him for a conditional 6th and you needed upside in that quarterback room. So he has upside. And so you need upside on this roster just because soon enough, the Steelers are going to be overturning a lot of their roster and they're going to need upside. And a guy like Mechie makes sense.
The Texans also just last year it was a 6th round pick, but Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State.
Yeah. I mean,
so
he's an interesting guy.
He's a slant merchant, but
yeah, I think the Aiyuk thing is interesting too. That was like the first thing a lot of people were in my mentions asking was like, what does this mean for Brandon Aiyuk trade? I'm like, well, I mean, John Lynch was pretty clear that said that we don't want to trade him. Like we're not going to trade him. And I think more, a lot of GMs say things that you can very easily walk back. Like, we have full faith in Kenny Pickett. Well, we did have full faith in Kenny Pickett, but then he asked for a trade, so we traded him. Or like, we want so-and-so to remain a blah, blah, blah. And then, well, we wanted him to, it just didn't work out. I thought this was a little more forceful than average. Not to say that he still couldn't be full of it and saying like, no, we're not trading him. So I don't know if there is a Brandon Aiyuk trade market, but for me, like, I don't know. Brandon Aiyuk's younger. He will be more expensive to whoever acquires him. I would feel pretty certain about that in terms of the salary you're going to have to lay out to sign him after you trade for him. But like, where does this take the market for him?
It's tough to kind of gauge because, again, Diggs is older and he's a guy that essentially only one guaranteed year got the 2nd round pick, which was a 3rd. I think Aiyuk could still garner a 1st. I think, there will be a competitive market for Brandon Aiyuk if he is out there, just because I think wide receiver 1s are so rare in the NFL. And I think Aiyuk is a stamped true 1 that has years to be a 1. So I could see the first round pick, but then again, I thought L'Jarius Sneed would go for more. Again, that's a true borderline, top corner, and he went for a third. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have to get paid. I mean, when we're talking about getting paid a lot of money, like Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are going to break the bank very soon and going to get 33, 35-ish. Ayuk's not going to get that, but could he get 30? Yeah, like 28 to 30-ish. Like that's what we're talking about with Aiyuk. I love the player, Brandon Aiyuk. So if you can get him, if he's there for a second, because again, I don't think if we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk being traded, I think we're talking in training camp or leading up to the season sometime there. I don't think we're talking, in the draft. If he is there for a second, if I'm the Steelers, dude, I'm all over that. Like I'm all over that. If he is there, I would pay him the 28-30. I think that is going to be a pretty good contract down the pipeline because again, you're going to have Jefferson and Lamb just blow that out of the water soon enough. I think it's a worthy
Chase is coming too.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just going to be a very big market for receivers. So if that's possible, I think you do it. But I do think, again, there's going to be a lot of suitors for him. So I think it's possible that he still goes for a one. I do.
I mean, I think the impossible to answer part of this question is like, how much did the fact that it seems like this was a trade of Stefon Diggs' creation go into his value, right? We're like, are there teams that are like, oh, Buffalo, who's trying to win a Super Bowl, is just like, we will shoot ourselves in the foot to get rid of this guy. Like, whoa, what does that say about wanting to have that guy? I wonder, I think that's probably the uncertain part of this. Like, how much of the return is the fact that if you're just a team that's just willing to give a guy away to get rid of him, then are other teams saying like, oh, well, what's wrong with it? Like, why is the price so low? Like, what, how damaged are these goods? And so, I haven't heard anything like that of Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, things could still get gnarly between him and the 49ers in the contract negotiation. But I think, certainly this doesn't seem like he's angling for an exit in this type of way. So if that is one of the big drivers of this return being underwhelming, then I could see a Brandon Aiyuk trade still coming in, about where most of it is expected it to, which was, probably some kind of late first round pick. But I will say I would have probably been wrong and too high on almost every player for draft pick trade this entire offseason. And so like a second round pick doesn't feel unreasonable anymore.
I don't know. I still, top receivers that don't have baggage, if we assume that a guy like Diggs does have that baggage that you would carry with him, and the fact that he is an older player that isn't, at the top of this league anymore for very long at least. We have seen A.J. Brown go for a first and a third not too long ago. We saw Tyreek Hill go for an absolute king's ransom in a similar situation where they were kind of looking for a new contract. Clearly that wasn't going to come, and then they get traded for a first, third, or multiple different things. So I look at Aiyuk. I think Aiyuk will stride more towards the A.J. Brown deal. I do. I think, a first round pick and then maybe a pick swap of a third and the Niners fourth or something. Sounds about right to me. So I feel like that's where it's going to land. Again, he's a young 25-year-old coming off his most productive season. He's going to cost a lot, but eventually, probably in a year's time, that contract isn't going to look that much like an albatross anymore. He's a top 10 receiver. I still tend to think the Aiyuk stuff. I understand, like, optimistically, if you're the Steelers, you're like, maybe a second will work, but I think it's going to be more in line with the A.J. Brown deal.
Yeah, I kind of walked away with it feeling like the Aiyuk market wasn't necessarily affected that much, but I tried to think of like other guys. Like I know that it's been shot down, but like if Terry McLaurin, like I could see like somebody like that is also, in that 28, 29 range. I could see that maybe impacting their trade market or value, I should say, more so than like a Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, I could see that, but I don't really expect many of these blockbuster wide receiver deals.
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't think of like many other names. Like, is Seattle going to move on from one of their guys? I don't necessarily think so. With I mean, they're still trying to compete. Yeah, I don't really see it.
I do wonder how this kind of impacts the draft board for the Steelers. I mean, I don't think it will a ton with Buffalo picking down at 27. I think that's like a pretty good spot for a wide receiver. I think there's a lot of guys that'll go in that range. And even if they trade up, I think it starts to even look good for the. I mean, look, any wide receiver that goes before the Steelers is probably a good thing for the Steelers. You're pushing corners down the board, you're pushing tackles down the board. So I think from a draft board perspective, this feels maybe neutral to slightly positive for the Steelers in the first round. Of course, in the second round, like we did probably like the Bills need 2 wide receivers now, maybe. I don't know. And certainly, like, if you were hoping that a guy like Xavier Worthy or something was going to fall to 50, I think it starts to look maybe less likely than that, with Buffalo kind of locked in on wide receiver there. And Houston not being a team that I think if you were lining up the draft choices, you kind of said, oh, this team needs a wide receiver. They aren't necessarily that's not how I would characterize them.
No, I don't think so. I think, you look at them now and they probably attack interior O-line could be a pick for them. Probably defense.
It could be where Zach Frazier goes at 42 now. I mean, I think we can probably think about that
I'm interested. I don't know about the interior O-line market. I don't know when the first guy comes off the board. That could be Jackson Powers Johnson there for all I know. I don't know how far he'll fall. I don't know when Graham Barton's going to go. I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a lot of variables there. But I don't think this impacts. I expected the Bills to go maybe receiver anyways, like when they had Diggs. Like, I thought that was a reasonable pick for them.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, I don't think that changes much about the first round. Maybe it pushes up that second group, as you said. Maybe a Xavier Legette, A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin goes.
Especially Buffalo can't be players in round. They don't have a pick in round 3. Rasul Douglas trade.
Yeah. So I feel like it maybe starts to make it a little less likely that one of those sort of aspirational receivers falls to the Steelers at 51. But you never know how that's going to go. I mean, it's really difficult to project beyond even the end of the first round, let alone what's going to happen between 30 and 50. So, is there anything else on this that we want to hit before we move on to some draft stuff?
I don't think so. No, not for me.
All right. We talked a lot about wide receiver over the last 2 days. I think we're talking about center. We kind of started this conversation, so that's good segue there. The names at center are pretty well known. Zach, I just go, what I think the really thing that is interesting to me about this interior line class is it really seems like there's a lot of uncertainty about where this group starts being drafted. I've seen some mock drafts where Jackson Powers Johnson goes in the teens, and I've talked to some people that think he might be there in the 40s. It is a big difference there, probably more than any other position. I know some of that is positional value. We've heard there's obviously medical concerns with Zach Frazier's leg. We've heard some whispers about Jackson Powers Johnson having some medical issues as well. Graham Barton's a project as an interior offensive lineman, played most of his college career at tackle. What do you make of these interior offensive linemen, and how do you go about figuring out what value looks like in this class?
It's tough. I think, one thing about this center group specifically is that it is like deep. And what I mean by that is if you don't need a starter, like you can grab a guy in 3 or 4 and, that second group where you're talking about, Tanner Bortolini, Dominic Puny, Mason McCormick, Hunter Norzad, Bo Limmer, like they got some athletic dudes that could be starters down the line, but need a year or 2 seasoning. So does that maybe make some teams wait for a center because there's these guys just down the board that you can get that are really athletic, really good players. So I don't know. I think Barton right now has to be the favorite to be the first off the board just because he's an athletic freak that can play all 5 positions.
Yeah, I think the center guard versatility really helps him because there are only so many teams that desperately need a center. So, Powers Johnson is he probably could play guard too. I haven't heard as much talk about that, but I mean, he's done it. Like Frazier is a pure center, I think.
I have talked to people about Barton that think he could play tackle. So I could see
right
it.
tackle. I think probably, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's out of the question.
Heard it. Like it's possible. His hands and feet are so coordinated and so polished that he is going to be a day one starter wherever he plays. So the Steelers draft him.
Sure, I agree with
starts
that.
at center week 1, period. I don't care.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
I think he's, and I'll say this. Here's my hot take. I think he's interior O-line 1 in this class. So I don't
think that's a hot take because I like his versatility and I like him at guard. I think playing center is a bit of a different animal. We saw it with Kendrick Green, man. Not everybody whose physical tools look like they should line up for that position are cut out to do it, and certainly not day one of your first season in the NFL. I would have a really hard time as the Pittsburgh Steelers signing up for a guy that has not played center in 3 seasons to be their starting center week 1 this year. Like, that feels like a terrible idea.
Here's my rebuttal to that. Like, I think the Kendrick Green's discourse has ruined our view of offensive line play here in the Steelers fan base. It's ruined it. Like, yes, you should be able to play guys in their natural spots if you can, but there are some special dudes on tape and in practice that have traits to play all 5 spots and have showcased that. Barton's one of them, man. Like, he has. And here's the other thing that's different between him and Kendrick Green. Actually, there's 3 things that's different. 1, Graham Barton has length. Kendrick Green's big thing was he just didn't have length, so he
had to play center.
He had to play center. He got hit in the chest and backed up real easily. Like, Barton, not really going to be an issue on the interior. At tackle, it can be an issue because those longer edge rushers get on you. At center, it'll be masked. When you look at Barton, too, his hands and feet are so coordinated and so polished, he's going to be able to split wherever he goes. Like, you can see it on tape. So when your hand usage is so polished and so good already, that offhand when you come on at center is going to be easier to adjust to. I'm not going to say that he's just going to like jump in and like be like an all pro, but I think you're going to be by week 8 of his rookie year at center. I think he'll be fine. I think he is going to be a really good player for a long time at center. So I would draft him, play him at center week 1, let him have some.
Would you draft him at 20?
I think he's worthy of the 20th overall pick. Now, would I draft an interior lineman in the first round? Probably not. But I do think that if you're going to draft a guy at 20, he's probably the guy I would want to take. I think the most natural projection and just plop and play is Zach Frazier. I think you look at him and you say, okay, you got so much experience. You've done this. You fit everything that Arthur Smith likes at the position. Just boom, right in there. I think JPJ is a little bit of a rawer project. Like, I think that's something that goes undersold with him. He only played 1 year at center this year. He's got some issues with his hand usage. He gets caught leaning over a little bit with his weight, so he can get beat with some power. He's a really good player still. I just think that he is a guy that will also struggle a little bit right out the gate. And also, he's had snapping issues. Like, that is something that
even at the Senior Bowl, his snaps weren't very good, and that's about as low stakes of a snapping environment as you can get, and it was pretty noticeable.
I agree.
We gotta quit with the snapping issues. We got to quit with the snapping issues in Pittsburgh.
Dude, it's been a bad trend the past years with these snapping issues here in Pittsburgh. So like, I think those 3 guys are really good prospects, but I also think the 20th overall pick, you know, when you're talking about guys that fit in that mold at the 20th overall pick, like, you want a guy that just, boom, day one, going to be a stud from day one. To me, at least, when you're taking a center like Tyler Linderbaum was, boom, go, right? Creed Humphrey should have been picked that high. Like, there were a lot of people that had him that high. He fell all the way to 63. But like, he could make sense. You can get centers throughout the draft, though. Like, history has shown that centers can be drafted and be starters pretty well throughout. Now, I don't know. I think, you know, when we're talking about where it starts, probably, I think the Steelers are probably the starting point for that group. I think they'll have all 3 guys on the board of 20. I think they'll be able to pick whoever they want. But right after that, you know, you're talking about teams that kind of need interior linemen. Like, you know, Dallas definitely needs an interior offensive lineman. That could be a landing spot for one of them.
Dallas, Green Bay, and Tampa are 3 in a row. That makes sense for interior.
I think Philly has Cam Jurgens, but could if they really fall in love with one of them. Like there's a lot of guys down the board, and then you even go further down the board. Say you passed up, an interior alignment in the first round. You talk about San Fran, Carolina. There's a lot of teams that could use center. Houston, that could like be interested in a center at least.
Well, and if you're doing a mock draft on Pro Football Network, the Chiefs, for whatever reason, might just take Zach Frazier.
I mean, that one actually, if they shockingly trade Trey Smith because they're not going to pay him and move Creed to guard or something, I don't know. That could be that would be insane. But
we got screwed, Smitty. We got screwed.
Absolutely.
At that point, you should
I know Nick's trying to play devil's advocate and make a case for it.
I am. I don't know. Like if the Chiefs are drafting Zach Frazier, it makes no sense. Like they should be drafting Cooper Beebe, right? Like
yeah, right. He's better.
Well, you draft the guard, man. Like I don't know, but like there's a lot of teams. I think that's interesting. There's a lot of teams that need center, but like don't need center. And what I mean by that is like they have a guy there. So do they fall? Do they go? I don't know. I think there's a chance that this group kind of does fall. If the Steelers don't take one in round one, Dallas doesn't take one, Green Bay doesn't take one, Tampa doesn't take one, and like the Niners take like Barton, like at that point, I mean, Frazier getting to 51 looks pretty likely. So I don't know.
Which is it? Like we talked about right before we started recording, all three of us, like when we were talking about, okay, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the centers. All of us said we don't see that being in play at 20. So like 51 is probably where the discussion starts, I guess, or a trade up. But like that would be good.
Or a trade back.
I guess trade back. Yeah, if they trade back with like Buffalo or Arizona, that makes a lot.
Well, that'd be funny. We've talked about Buffalo. That could be the way that the discussion ends up tying in down the road.
Buffalo comes up to 20 to take AD Mitchell, and the Steelers take Graham Barton at 28. I could see that.
I think Arizona at 27 is a pretty good trade partner too, just because they have so many day 2 picks.
They have that, dude. 27 and 35 for 20 and 51. Make it happen.
I think he could even. I think I would even take 27 and 66. Like I think I would do that deal. Just cause it depends
without including another pick.
Yeah. No. I would want to come up in the second round though. I
would love to, but I don't think that's realistic.
That's dead on trade value chart.
I understand, but like that Arizona roster is very thin and needs the picks to fill it out. So I think they will take.
Well, they're probably going to get. I mean, I'm not going to say probably, but
yeah,
there's a chance they get even more picks.
If they don't trade down, if they don't trade down from 4, I think it becomes. If they trade down from 4, I think it becomes more realistic. They would come back up.
I agree with that. But yeah, I mean, 27 and 35 would obviously be like incredible because you could get Barton and Jackson Power. I mean, you wouldn't even have to take Barton or JPJ necessarily at 27 at that point.
No, you could take Guyton. You could take AD Mitchell. You could take
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, Kool-Aid, right. Yeah,
like, that would be incredible because
that'd be funny to move to 27 and take AD Mitchell one spot in front of the Bills. Just that
would be interesting though, because that opens up the entire like board where you can be like, all right, don't have to panic about anything. I think that's why
I mean, I think you just look at okay, they need a center. They really should upgrade tackle. They need a wide receiver. They really should get some depth at defensive tackle. They need a slot corner. Like they don't have enough high picks to do all that.
And so, from what the pro day movements show, like they want an inside linebacker. So like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they want an inside linebacker. They probably need 2 wide receivers. Like there just aren't enough high draft picks to make impacts at all those places.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was talking about,
and especially with the way, like, look, if the draft goes chalk and the Steelers don't take a center at 20 and Frazier doesn't make it to 51, I don't know how you can sit there at 84 and just hope and pray that Cedric Van Pran gets to you. Like you have to go up and get him.
That's what happened to us.
Yeah, because like you can't wait anymore. There's no more day 1 starters left.
I was talking with Derek about this, where it feels like the Steelers are going to be pretty active after the draft and free agency. Like, I do believe that.
Yeah, I
Remember
agree with
last
that.
year, I think it was literally on day 3 they signed Shannon Sullivan.
Yes.
They brought in Quan in training camp. They brought in Marcus Golden. They brought in all of these guys late in the
Brought
process.
Mason back after the draft.
Yep. They brought Mason back. Like, they filled all of these holes after the draft. I think this year what they might do, I think there's probably one move coming before the draft that's probably going to shake the board a little bit. Whether that's signing Brian Allen or someone like that, just so you know you have someone. I do think though what I think they're going to do is, okay, there's clearly going to be right now one position that you're going to look at and say that sucks. Like, it sucks. Like, that's going to be one position. So after the draft,
if they do a really good job of drafting, that'll be one. It could be more than one.
But that's where, okay, say they have to get Frazier and they draft Mims, and maybe at 84 the board doesn't fall well and they get a raw prospect at receiver. If Tyler Boyd's still out there, that's what could tick the offer, right? Like, that's something that could happen.
And they have money. It's not like they're broke.
Yes.
It's the idea of them being active still in free agency is not crazy.
Yeah, okay, they don't get a tackle early, but they want to upgrade on Dan Moore. Maybe they call Donovan Smith and see what's going on there. Or at center, maybe they go with Van Pran at 84. Don't love that. So they're going to see, in training camp, what's Connor Williams doing? And is he getting close? That is what I think is going to end up happening here, is they are going to fill out a depth chart in the draft and see what positions get filled very quickly. And then after the draft, are they going to bring back Patrick Peterson? Whatever. I think they're going to make a few signings maybe right after the draft. I mean, we could see draft day signing at slot corner right away if they don't get one. I just feel like that's what's going to end up happening here, a trade, something, right? Maybe they don't want to trade for a center until after the draft if that doesn't work out for them. So I feel like they are that post free agency period after the draft, that to me is going to be a pretty big spot for them to fill out holes, because they have done it. I believe Omar's first thing on the job he ever did was retiring and signing Larry. That is something he has done before. They traded for Akello Witherspoon at a similar time to fill corner hole. They do that. So I think they're going to they signed Casey really late too, right? They signed him after the draft, I believe. I think that's something that they will probably do at some positions here. And maybe it's center. I don't know. The center free agency market is bad though. So that feels like a draft. And if they end up, I think the top 4 guys can play year one. I do think Van Pran can be a day one starter too. It would be rough, but I think he can do it. But you get past him, if you start, getting into Mason McCormick, Tanner Bortolini, Hunter Norzad, Bo Limmer, Dominic Puny, these guys who I like, but day one starter, no. And if they wait and willingly wait, I mean, maybe that says more about their thoughts at Nate Herbig than I think, but I'm not believing the Nate Herbig smoke, man. This is a guy that has played 49 career snaps at center. And Alan, you and I can attest to this, did not play center in practice last year.
Not after training camp.
Not after training camp. It was Mason Cole.
There was 1 week maybe where he did a little bit. It was very little.
Cole was banged up probably. And
yeah.
It was Cole with the first team and McCollum with the second, right?
Yeah,
that's what it was almost all year.
And James Daniels, I've literally never seen hold a football in his hands.
Nope. Spencer Anderson got some in there too.
Spencer Anderson has had some reps. We did this yesterday with Derek. We'll do it today with Nick. Put you on the spot. Who's the Steelers starting center in week 1?
Zach Frazier. I don't know, man. It feels right. I still, look at who is on the board and who fits what they want. And if the love is going all the way back to the Senior Bowl, and I'm hearing murmurs of that guy at the Senior Bowl, I heard that with Keanu Benton last year, and they drafted Keanu Benton and
Najee Harris.
And, I just I think Zach Frazier is going to be the guy they want. I really do. He fits everything they want. He has started so many games. He is like the perfect Steelers center. He fits what Arthur Smith likes. He is like. Here's the thing about JPJ and Barton. I think Barton's the most polished lineman of the group. Maybe not the most polished center, just because he's going to have some kind of just natural, things to get adjusted to. I think he'll be like go. I think JPJ will be a little bit kind of rough to start, but can be a lot of future upside. In terms of just plug and play, boom, we know what we're getting. Like Zach Frazier is the sure thing. That's what they need. So I think Zach Frazier is going to be the week 1 starter of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'll make another prediction. I think he'll be there at 51.
I agree that it's Frazier. I think they'll have to trade up to get him.
I don't think they will. I think, the medical concerns with the leg, the fact that I think Barton and JPJ are probably not going to go as early as a lot of people think. I think that he'll get pushed down the board just enough and get there at 51.
We might as well all be. So I'm going to be on Frazier too, but we might as well all do different paths here. They're going to trade down from 20.
Trade
That's
down from 20. Take him take him in the late first round.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
I like it.
All right. Great conversation. Nick, before we get out of here, tell the people that you find you.
Yeah, you can find me on X, Twitter at Farabaugh
There we go. And SteelersNow.com.
Yes.
Got all kinds of good stuff.
Alex,
Derek's whole wide receiver ranking just dropped, so go check that out at the site, SteelersNow.com. PGA Steelers Now on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Saunders_PGH is all my stuff. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
there we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about. Any questions for a future episode? Leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. If it's not on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, we can be found there. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, Alan Saunders, Nick Farabaugh, and myself. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride with us on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.